Welcome to your next lecture in composition. This week you'll learn how to view your work with a critical eye and use the revision process to generate effective writing. You'll learn more about the difference between revising and editing, and how asking the right questions about your writing can help you produce high-quality papers. Are you ready to get started? Here we go. We need to begin with a discussion on the difference between revising and editing. One of the most important things to remember when you return to a draft of your essay is that revising and editing are two very different things. Revising is basically having a revision of your work. Consider that word. Revision literally means to see again. So when you embark upon a revision, you go over your entire essay and analyze your ideas, your organization, and whether or not you make points clearly. Revision is not about small errors, it's about larger content issues. It's not possible to edit your work unless you have revised it first. When you edit, you catch inconsistencies or errors. You're more focused on small-scale mistakes, like errors in spelling and punctuation. You'll learn more about editing in next week's lecture. At this point in the course, you should have a good amount of information for your paper collected. You should have a topic, a thesis, and have done a considerable amount of research. Ideally, the first draft of your paper is complete, and you're ready to begin the revision process. For too many people, the final draft of their paper is the same as the first draft. Many people simply run spell check, slap a title and their name on the first page, hit print, and turn the paper into their instructor. I can't stress enough that this is not the way you should be writing your papers. In fact, revision is often the most important step in the writing process. This is when you find and fix anything that isn't just right. Failing to analyze and improve your work is likely to result in you receiving a low grade. Also, waiting until the last minute and cranking out a paper makes essay writing a stressful and unpleasant task. If you spread your work out over a reasonable amount of time, you can enjoy yourself in the process and do your work well. Begin the revision process by slowly rereading your paper. I recommend printing out a copy of your paper and having a fine-tipped marker or pen in hand so you can circle words and phrases that don't seem quite right, and note any changes you find necessary. Comb through your work slowly and meticulously, asking yourself the questions you learned last week about critical thinking. What is the main idea? What conclusions are reached regarding the main idea? What reasons or evidence do I give to support the conclusions? And are the reasons or evidence fact or opinion? If you can't answer these questions, take note that you need to spend more time developing or articulating your points. Now let's take a moment to go over a few tips for revision. Read your paper out loud. This will allow you to catch any places where your language doesn't sound right. Print your paper and read it with a pen. Moving slowly with a pen in hand will allow you to catch changes you might not see on screen. Change the font. Sometimes we look at our computer screens for so darn long that glaring errors may be staring us right in the face, but we just don't see them. When something actually looks different, we see things we otherwise would not have. Let your writing sit. The longer you spend away from your writing, the fresher your perspective will be when you return to it. It's also helpful to create a revision checklist. A revision checklist is a list of your writing issues. My list is on a neon pink note card that I keep affixed to my desk. Whenever I write something new and am ready to revise, I look over my note card to make sure I haven't repeated some of my usual errors. For me, verb tense and point of view can be challenging. Having a reminder to look out for those things really helps. I recommend that you develop a revision checklist for yourself as well. Keep track of the feedback your instructors give you about your writing and note where you struggle. Build upon it as you learn more about yourself as a writer. You learned in your last composition course about the 4 basics of revising an essay: unity, support, coherence, and sentence skills. Now you're going to apply these 4 basics of your own writing so you can make it as effective as possible. Unity in an essay means that everything in your essay flows. Look through your introduction, supporting paragraphs, and conclusion. Does all the material flow and belong together? Are there any words or phrases that do not support your thesis? When writing a first draft, Sometimes the best way to get your thoughts on paper is to write whatever is on your mind. Although this is an effective tool in the pre-writing process, and it can help you get ideas out, you don't want your paper to have random tangents in which you start going off about something unrelated to your topic. You have to make sure all of your sentences flow, and that each of your paragraphs are related to your thesis. Now's a good time to remind you that you should never include information in your essay that is unrelated to your thesis. Pay special attention to the sample essays in your reading assignments. They detail the revision process quite well and can help you tremendously. Keep this in mind as you're going over your work. You need unity in your essays, no matter what. You already learned about the importance of support in an essay, but in revision you actually have to make sure you've provided that support. It can be helpful to think about your paper as though you're a lawyer trying to convince a jury to agree with your case. Think about how your information would be presented in a courtroom. Do you have any claims that are not backed up? You have to show facts to your audience if you want them to believe what you're saying and to agree with your thesis. Providing support for your work is a key part of the revision process. Let's take a look at the example below. Plastic bags should be banned in the United States. Some cities already have bans on plastic bags, and these bans have been effective. The above example does not have any support. Although it is clear that the writer believes plastic bags should be banned, she does not provide any information about why plastic bags are bad, or why the bans on plastic bags have been effective. Also, where do bans on plastic bags exist? This example needs to be more specific for it to be strong. Let's take another look. Non-biodegradable plastic bags should be banned in the United States because they are harmful to the environment. Non-biodegradable plastic bags break into tiny pieces and are harmful to wildlife. San Francisco has implemented a ban on plastic bags in an effort to encourage consumers to bring a reusable shopping bag or use a paper bag instead. Do you see how the second example provides more information than the first? We now know what type of plastic bag should be banned, non-biodegradable ones. And we know about a city that has passed a ban, San Francisco. The example now has support. Do you see how much stronger it is now? Next, let's discuss coherence. Coherent is defined as intelligent and articulate. Basically, coherence means that everything you say makes sense. Have you ever heard someone use the word incoherent to describe someone? For example, if I asked you a question and you babbled a senseless answer, I might say, "She's completely incoherent right now." You want to make sure your writing comes off as coherent. Do all your points make sense? Do your paragraphs effectively relate to your thesis? Are there any irrelevant sentences or phrases that don't belong? You should be asking yourself these questions when you revise for coherence. Your textbook provides exercises in revising for coherence. Make sure to check them out when you complete this week's reading assignment. The last part of the revision process is sentence skills. If you worry about the strength of your sentences before you consider things like clarity and organization, you might end up strengthening sentences that you ultimately decide didn't even belong in your essay. This is why sentence-level revision is the last part of the revision process. Think about the big issues first. Concentrate on your paper at large. Are the paragraphs in the right order? Do your ideas make sense? Does one paragraph lead into the next? Do you include information that doesn't pertain to your thesis? Fix these problems before you worry about polishing your sentences. Otherwise, you'll waste your time. Or you might spend so much time making your sentences strong that you refuse to throw them out. Remember to revise your sentences so they are as effective as possible. Your sentences should not be too wordy or convoluted. Make sure your writing is clear and easy to read so your reader can easily understand the point you're trying to make. Don't throw in big words to try and sound impressive. You don't want to confuse your reader. To focus on your sentence skills, take a look at your sentences. Are they well written? Make sure that you're using parallelism when writing your sentences. Parallelism is when you make sure the words in a pair or series are written in parallel structure. You learned about parallelism in your last composition course, but now we're going to take a closer look. Today I'm going hiking, biking, and to jog. Do you see how that sentence sounds funny? The words to jog throw you off because they're not written in the same form. Because hiking and biking are ing words, jog should take the same form. Look again at the sentence below. Today I'm going hiking, biking, and jogging. Also, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. You have to make sure you're using a consistent point of view in your writing. You can't jump around between first person, second person, and third person point of view. Remember to use consistent pronouns too. Do you notice anything funny about the sentence below? Paul drove to the restaurant and had dinner alone. Then they drove home and went to bed. Do you see how the pronoun they is not consistent with the rest of the example? By saying, then they drove home and went to bed, it appears there are two people leaving the restaurant and going home. We know this can't be the case, however, because it says that Paul went to the restaurant alone. By changing the pronoun they, the example will be much clearer. Take a look. Paul drove to the restaurant and had dinner alone. Then he drove home and went to bed. Now that you know how to revise your paper, be sure to give yourself enough time to revise your paper properly. Between now and next week, I recommend that you work on revisions and get as much work done on your paper as possible. You only have one more week left before you'll submit the final product to your instructor. So the sooner you get started on the revision process, the better.